Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuto al prossimo appuntamento di Untitled Chapter Masterclass. You've joined us today together with Tommaso Chiarli from the Chiarli Winery in Lambrusco, one of the most sought after and exciting areas that people today are, I'll say, rediscovering. It's a real treat to have him with us today. Tommaso, ci sei?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Good
Hello
to see
everybody.
you.
Yes.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking some time from your afternoon over there in Modena. It's a treat to have you. It's actually a treat to be working with your family for these years now. It's an absolute thrill. And we're kind of riding that wave here in the United States, and I think internationally with Lambrusco. We've got some new people that have joined us today. So by way of introduction, let me at least start just a minute with a brief intro on Dolaterra. So this is a company that I founded. Brian Larkey founded it in 1990, about 30 years ago. I came out of UC Davis, was all interested in winemaking, worked in Napa Valley for a number of years, and from Napa headed out to Italy. And I fell in love with the country, fell in love with the people, fell in love with the stories, fell in love with the diversity. Coming out of Napa, where we had 10 grapes, and in Italy there's 600. I mean, you guys, the math is pretty simple. It's I think one of the most exciting wine growing regions in the world, and Italy really came into its own. I got out there in 1985, and it really came into its own. I think coincidentally, right around that time, and never looked back. And since then, Italian wines have been named the #1 wine in the world a number of times by various journalists throughout the United States. And along the way, I thought that the United States needed this diversity. The United States needed these stories and needed to have these families, but represented in a completely new and different way. And that way, coined the term Dolaterra Winery Direct. And Dolaterra means of the earth, Dalla Terra, like terra firma. And Winery Direct is exactly what it means. We're shipping wines, recording the markets directly between the winery and the United States market. And from the chart here, you can see that with our model, the wineries make a little bit more money and the consumer pays less than the traditional model. The difference is that we skip the national importers. So we remove one tier from what's really called the 3-tier system, but as you can see, it's actually 4. So this has been a fantastic opportunity to get some of the families and some of the stories from throughout Italy into the US. And up to now, we still got some areas that we're looking to explore. After 30 years, we work with about 30 brands owned by about 20 families. We've got a team at Dolaterra of 20 dedicated team members that work with us from Maine to San Diego and from Seattle down to Miami. We crisscross the United States. It's a great family, both here in the US as well as the families we work with over there. And the key here is a really small, curated portfolio. So that's a little background on us. And Chiarli came to us, quanti anni fa, ti ricordi? Io no, non ricordo. 10 years. 8, 7, 9. 7, 8, 9
like
years ago.
Something like that.
And it was a real decision for us that we wanted to get into the Lambrusco business. It was a time about a decade ago when things really began to happen here in the United States. And it's when we look for a new winery, when we look for a new organization to work with, we're really talking about working with a new family. And we love to get married, and we never want to get divorced. So we really look carefully. There's Beatrice, Anselmo, your father, and you. So for this, we always check in with our own producers first and ask them, who are you guys like, and what are you guys hearing? And by far, CLETO CHIARLI, the Chiarli family, was head and shoulders above everyone that we were even interested in talking to and working with. But the interesting thing was your dad really wasn't interested in talking to us, was he? We wanted him, but he really didn't need us. He had had a bad experience in the United States years and years ago, and got burned.
So very negative.
Very negative. Didn't want to come.
He's always a very negative person.
I wouldn't say he's always a negative person. I'd say he's a cautious person. And he's balanced by your mom's positivity. So that's a good team. It's a good team, but it was tough to convince him, and not so much in Dolaterra. He didn't know us really to get back in the U.S. market. And we got started, and we never looked back. But first, we really had to earn his trust and earn his respect for what we were working on and how we built the Chiarli brand here in the United States. But we were really riding a wave. We were riding a Lambrusco wave. And first of all, can you give us just a little bit of background, perhaps, maybe where are you guys located? I think we have some maps prepared that'll give us some idea where you guys are located in Italy, but essentially in Emilia-Romagna.
Yes, exactly. So thank you, Brian, for the introduction.
Absolutely.
CLETO CHIARLI is based in Emilia-Romagna, so that part of Italy, that region of Italy in the center north, where the booth opens up. Exactly within Emilia-Romagna, we're based in Modena. So the very first winery that was established in 1860 was born and still is based in Modena, which is the city at the very center of Emilia. The new winery that was founded in 2003, the CLETO CHIARLI brand winery, is based in Castelvetro, as you see in the south part of the region. Of course, Chiarli has a very, very long history, very important history. CLETO CHIARLI and Chiarli Group as a winery group was born in 1860. My ancestor, CLETO CHIARLI, of course, the founder, had very humble origins and followed the typical entrepreneurial history in businesses in Italy. He came from the countryside to the city. He decided to open a local trattoria, osteria, a local restaurant. And of course, at the time, there wasn't really a commercial type of Lambrusco, a Lambrusco bottled in a typical glass bottle and commercialized outside of the local city. He decided to start this business on the side. So he decided to make his own Lambrusco, his own red, sparkling, fizzy, light sparkling wines for his guests, the guests of his restaurants. And the legend, the story says that his wine was so much better than the food that he decided to close down the restaurant and kind of keep on the wine business. And of course, the history has proved him right in this sense. I'm the fifth generation right now. I have 4 cousins, and therefore there's 5 of us. And the company now is run by my father Anselmo and his uncle Mauro. Of course, CLETO CHIARLI and Chiarli as a family has had a very long history and a very rich history. We were the first company to export and produce Lambrusco in the area, as I said. We have a recollection of being a part of many international expositions already in the early 1900s. And we were very, very, very proud of our wine since the beginning. The company developed very quickly. So in the very first half of the 20th century, we were already producing over 1 million bottles, which was incredible for the time. And incredibly enough, those very early young stage Lambrusco was a DOC Lambrusco, was a dry type of Lambrusco, was a serious traditional Lambrusco. And this is something that I'm gonna keep on saying during this masterclass to everybody. Lambrusco was born in a dry, very, very elegant, moderate alcohol content from 10 to 12% alcohol as a serious wine. And of course, CLETO CHIARLI and his sons later on had the opportunity to acquire a vast amount of land in different estates in the area that was shown before. So from the Sorbara area in the north side of Modena to the Grasparossa area on the south side of Modena, where we now find the CLETO CHIARLI winery. The company and the family owns around 120 hectares in the best, most authentic area for the production of Lambrusco grape varietals, and in particular, when we speak about Chiarli and the Modena type of Lambrusco, we try to stick to 2 different grape varietals, the Grasparossa and the Sorbara. These are very, very important grape varietals in the history and the world of Lambrusco. They provide these very elegant wines that we find nowadays in the most educated markets, such as the US, the Scandinavian markets, Japan. And of course, these are the two grape varietals that are making us very proud in these markets, that are making our suppliers, our clients very, very proud to work with CLETO CHIARLI in these markets, and that are bringing back a good name to this very, very, very historical wine, very historical family of grape varietals, which are the Lambrusco grape varietals.
All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks for covering everything. If there's any questions, you guys just go ahead and type them in. And I think we touched on just about everything there. Going back just a wee bit, first of all, on where you guys are located. I mean, that map that we had up gives you a great idea. And I think that when you look at where you guys are located in Modena, you're partway between them. You're right smack in the middle of Emilia-Romagna, and you're kind of right between Parma, Bologna,
yes.
You're north of Florence, and you're right in the heart of everything that most people love or would love to have. If I was going to pick one place where I had to like be within bicycling distance of some of the greatest things in the world, depending on one's perspective, of course, you guys would be right up there in the competition, because you're right in the middle of prosciutto di Parma, you're right in the middle of Parmigiano Reggiano, the greatest cheese, and some of the greatest prosciutto in the world.
Yeah.
You're right between Ferrari and Lambrusco. You've got Aceto Balsamico. I mean, all those things happen right there. So first of all, you're definitely a product of your environment. I think that's a fair thing to say. And we'll talk a bit later in wine and food pairing, but man, you're surrounded by things. And in Italy, perhaps more than most areas, only because there's so many different varietals, and wine is made in every single of the 20 regions in Italy. Maybe more so there, but when you really want to look at what those wines pair with, you can look at what kind of food is growing around there, what kind of dishes are made, because over the millennium they've really come together in a beautiful way. And then the United States in the 70s and the 80s, et cetera, really fell in love with Lambrusco, to the point where it was the most imported wine in the United States, was Italian Lambrusco. Millions and millions and millions and millions of cases were flowing into this country. But they were a very different Lambrusco. They are the Lambrusco that your family created under the Chiarli 1860 brand. And those things are still going on. It's still an important piece of your business. It's a large piece of your business. And for those wines, you produce a lot of bottles. And for those wines, you work with a number of different growers to source the fruit. But somewhere down the line, your father and your uncle, they started thinking, they really realized that you guys were already down in some of that. You had some of the best vineyards in the area. And why mescolare? Why mix those in with average fruit? Why not create something that was extraordinary? And so in the early 2000s, 2000, 2002, 2003, you were building and decided to create this whole new reality. And somehow you guys literally bet the farm on the thinking that something that had been going on so well, you guys are ready to take it to the next level. And considering the volume that comes out of there and the identity that comes out of there, when people think about or thought about Lambrusco, they were thinking about something completely different than what you guys had in mind. So why would you mess with success? Why did your family think that it was okay to do that? You just celebrated 150 years of history at Chiarli. And to go ahead and build a whole new winery and a whole new image, why would you mess with success? Why did you think that this was a good idea?
Well, of course, thank you, Brian, for bringing this up. This is a very, very important topic to touch. And of course, as I said, in the first half of the 20th century, Lambrusco was very much appreciated in many markets as a very dry, high quality type of wine. But as you said, after the 50s, something started to happen. The Charmat method helped us produce a very even lighter.
I have no idea what that means. What is that? What does that mean?
So the tank method, the method of fermenting wine in pressurized tanks. So that allowed producers in the area to produce a very, very light type of Lambrusco, a Lambrusco that could have a very high level of sugars and a very low alcohol content. That at the time was very, very appealing to the big grocers, to many consumer profiles around the world. And that kind of helped the area grow in terms of volumes. It helped creating big wineries such as ourselves in the private sector, but also big co-ops that started producing in a mass quantity this wine. Of course, by living in the sector and understanding the trends of the market, my dad and his uncle understood that something was not going so well. The reputation of this wine was going down as the numbers of bottles were sold and they were growing. So you know, we live in the wine world, and we believe that the brand, the image, the reputation of a wine is the key for a long-term success. Therefore, we decided that it was the right time towards 2000 to build a new winery completely separated from Chiarli 1860, the CLETO CHIARLI winery that you see in the picture, to produce extremely high quality, authentic, again, I must repeat, type of Lambrusco, and express the different varietals of Lambrusco that Lambrusco has to offer. This was, we could do this because since the 70s, my uncle, who takes part in the agriculture activity of the business, he decided to plant the best clones of Lambrusco through a muscle selection in the different estates that we own in around Modena. And he decided to select the most authentic type of clones for Sorbara, for Grasparossa, and throughout 30 years, he started replanting them in our estates. In 2003, we were ready to start a production of the very premium production. And therefore, we built the CLETO CHIARLI winery, which is, as I said, located in Castelvetro, in one of the most important estates for the company, the Cialdini estates, where our family had lived there for 100 years now. And there, we started to apply a very different kind of mentality to our wines, to our production, a very different type of production method as well. So while in Chiarli 1860 and most important and big wineries in the Lambrusco area, we buy the grape must, the base wine from the local cooperatives. In the Castelvetro, in the CLETO CHIARLI winery, we work only 100% with our grapes. This might sound obvious for many people, that you do your wine, you make your wine with your own grapes. But in the Lambrusco area, that is not the case. We were the first to reapply this very meticulous production, this very meticulous concept to, I would say, quite a large scale of production. In Castelvetro, as I said, we work mainly with Grasparossa and Sorbara. The production method is very different from the Chiarli 1860 company and many big wineries. We stock the sweet must throughout the year in very controlled temperature tanks and follow a single slow fermentation from 100% sweet must. So unlike the other winery, we do not do a two fermentation process, which is, let's say, the normality for Lambrusco production and other sparkling wines production, but we work from 100% sweet must. This allows us to obtain very fresh, young wines. This allows us to obtain fine bubbles and very elegant style of Lambrusco.
All right, so what I'm getting from all this is you got a very bipolar company, completely bipolare, because you've got one area, generally speaking, somebody is big and they produce millions of bottles and they're really good at that. or someone is estate grown, estate bottled, focused, and they're working with Massal selections and replanting their vineyards, and they're working at the very pinnacle. You guys are trying to do both. And the crazy thing is you're actually doing both. And you're really good at doing both. And so, but it's really working. As a result, you've become one of the leaders here in the United States. By the way, we do not work with the Chiarli, we work with the CLETO Chiarli, estate grown, estate bottled wines. We only work at the very pinnacle. And you guys have really been a lead. That there are fewer than, I don't know, wineries within Lambrusco that have chosen to also follow with estate grown, estate bottled wines, as opposed to the that's really what built the name. Yo mama's Lambrusco. This is what's happening today. This is a whole new direction. And as you said, you've done it through vineyards. You've done it through specifically, there's over 60 varietals within the Lambrusco family of grapes. And you're focusing on the Sorbara, which is denser and darker and comes, as you said, from south of Modena, which is Castelvetro state itself is located right in the middle of Rospa vineyards. But it's a journey that you guys have just, and it's incredible as followed that from restaurants to consumers across. There is a resurgence aboard for at least a decade here in the United States, quality in Lambrusco in general, in particular. And things that I want to get into. First, we need to back up a little bit when we're talking about quality. Let me just give some background to some folks. You said selection, or maybe it's a big muscle. No, but the word is Massal, M-A-S, selection. And that is just after decades and decades, or in many cases, generations, man can go into nature, and man selects the individual vines that are working the best in that soil, in that microclimate, on that terroir, and says, these are the ones that we're cuttings from those specific ones. So let's go. And so through a reiterative process, focus, and eventually get vineyards that are with a group of these selected vines. They're not clonal select. It's stronger in the sense that diverse and a diverse genetic process. So that's number one. Reduced yields, built a new winery right there in the middle of the Grassa Rossa. So you've done everything possible to keep the transportation short and really focus on there's no excuses for if there was an issue, you guys solved that issue and bridged, which is extraordinary. So the two varietals, Grassa Rossa, Sorbara being lighter, specifically in color. It's almost like a rosé color, and it's still wine. It's and then also Grassa Rossa, which is darker and richer. Can you give us some descriptions on these two, and also on the imagery that we can bring up later on? There we go. So this one, the Vecchia Modena, this is the Sorbara. Yeah. You can see the color in that, and share with us a little bit, if you would, about comparing these two varietals.
Of course. So the Sorbara, we start from the Sorbara, is one of the most ancient and most, I would like to say, local Lambrusco. Till the Sorbara was not really brought into the market. We believe it's probably the most important grape varietal that we work with. It's very, very particular grape varietals. Of course, as you can see, starting from the grape bunch, you see that there is a very, very interesting, funny, and multi-color grape bunch. You have some red berries, some white berries that are not ripe in the season, and therefore the characteristics of this wine and the high acidity, really low natural sugar content compared to most Lambrusco grape varietals. Or with this Lambrusco, it is very, very hard, semi-sweet or sweet type of Lambrusco grape variety allows for an high style and high in acid type of Lambrusco. It grows, as I said, in north side of Modena, interesting area until the early 20th century. It was mostly covered. There are two rivers, the Secchia and the soil is of very, very heavy alluvial origins. We find sand, silt, they provide this very salinity, sapidity, and therefore we find this very light body cut by the acidity. For Sorbara, of course, we compare this wine starting from the local specialties, the charcuterie. So we start from prosciutto di Parma, salame, mortadella, this very, very dry, aged, salty type of cured meats. And then, of course, I like to partners that So great wine for seafood. Has got that acidity, that's the sapidity, that lightness that can go with fried. For example, you can think of a fried calamari. That's also an interesting wine to pair with. You've got the acidity that cuts the fried part of the calamari. And we also are kind of very, very attached, especially to the label, the Vecchia Modena. This is the very, very first label that we have in our archives. This is from the late 19th century, early 20th century, so a very, very old label for the company that we always kept, and that we also kind of reused in the new project of CLETO CHIARLI. And as Brian can confirm, it's probably the most or the most sold important CLETO CHIARLI label in the US at the moment. We also have for the Sorbara the Fondatore, which is an interpretation of an ancestral, so bottle fermented type of Sorbara. We start from the same material, so the same Sorbara grapes from the Sozzegalli, so the estate that we own in the north of Modena. Here we have a second fermentation that happens in the bottle. So throughout the springtime, we bottle a partially fermented Sorbara Lambrusco around January, late December. And we have a bottle fermented, we obtain a bottle fermented Sorbara throughout late spring. This is a very interesting interpretation of Sorbara. It is the Sorbara that was produced by my ancestors in the early 20th century, and that gives another interpretation to Sorbara compared to the Vecchia Modena, which is lighter, more straightforward. Here we are in the Fondatore. We have more, we have a bigger complexity. We have a richer taste given by the residual yeasts. And this is a wine that can also handle kind of richer food compared to the Vecchia Modena. And we believe that the Sorbara has helped CLETO CHIARLI and the whole of Lambrusco, let's say, new movement, bring back the reputation and convince young sommeliers and young wine experts of the potential of Lambrusco.
So the last image we were just saying, that was the Fondatore.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And the Vecchia Modena, correct?
Yes.
Let's go back a second to those to that image, because these couldn't be more emblematic of the winery. These are really, I think, the two wines that bookend what you guys are working on. It talks about the history. It talks about the very, very different styles. So the Fondatore, which in this image that we're looking at is on our left. And you can see they're both from Sorbara. They're both that beautiful light rosé color one. But in one case, the wine has 0 residual sugar. And the other one, it has 8 grams per liter, more or less, right? In the Vecchia Modena. So, wow, these wines couldn't be more different. And so these wines, I think, are really great for talking a little bit more about winemaking and a little bit more about the kind of the history, the percorso that winemaking made in Lambrusco, and not just in Lambrusco. If we look at Italy today, and we look at the wines that are working today, the wines that are popular today, Italian, many of them are sparkling. They got fizz, they got bubbles. They're Italian, and those wines would be Lambrusco. Those wines would be Moscato d'Asti. Prosecco, obviously, is in that mix. And within this group, we've got a lot of technology, I think, that really made this happen. So the Fondatore on the left, which is traditionally when you see it is closed with a little string, versus the Vecchia Modena that has this special clamp on the top of it. Exactly. Take a look at that. Very, very different ideas. And the Vecchia Modena, as you said, is very, very well distributed throughout the United States, and it's found a huge audience over here. So that's one that has 8 grams per liter. Really, what set Lambrusco on a different trajectory, I would say, when we get into winemaking. And you can fill us in on this a little bit more, as it did with Moscato, as it did with Prosecco, is the ability to do high-end sterile filtration, essentially. To do that takes a lot of technology. You really couldn't do these kind of things in the 40s and 50s and 60s. There was no money, there was no market, and the technology was just beginning to come into its own. Later on, you went to Flask Pasteurization, which was a way of sterilizing things. And the reason that you guys did that, just for really quick background, is so you can stop the fermentation while there's some residual sugar in it. But that didn't give the best quality to the wine, to have it like reach boiling for a second and then drop back down. Basically cook the wines very, very quickly to sterilize them while there's still residual sugar in them. So you guys went to some really, really high tech bottling techniques, which essentially is sterile filtration. So you're able to take a fermenting tank, chill it down so it stops fermenting, sterile filter it. And as a result, we have wines that are fresh and bright and complex and are loaded with fruit, not stewed prunes, not something that's resulted from pasteurization. But it was this new technology, really, that your father and your uncle
invested
Mauro,
in the new winery.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a huge, I think, but that the market would respond, that the market was going to support you and reward you essentially for these investments. Chapeau. And
it's very important to mention that by having such a fresh product and produced many times during the year, especially the Vecchia Modena, we have different small lots produced along the year. We have the ability to offer a product that has often a problem for this kind of young sparkling wines. Their quality decays quite quickly with time. By starting off with such freshness, such rapidity in presenting for our customers, are always finding in their stores fresh Vecchia Modena, which of course is going to help Lambrusco to be seen as a high quality wine.
Because the goal here is fruit. The goal here is freshness and brightness. The goal here is have those strawberries and whatnot in your mouth with every bottle. So you guys, as you said earlier, you're doing a number of fermentations throughout the year. You're not just fermenting it once, but you're setting aside the juice. In this case it's sorbata, but the sorbata juice that's been settled, it's been racked, it's clean, it's clear, and it's sitting at very, very low temperatures, so it won't ferment. So you can warm that up during the year. So it might be summertime, you're able to do a fresh fermentation and put fresh wine, fresh Lambrusco on the marketplace, which is crucial, versus the Fondatore, the wine we spoke about earlier. Is that wine clear to look at when it's in the glass? No. Why? Is there something wrong with it? What's the matter with it?
Not at all. So this wine, following the last fermentation that happens, as I said, within the bottle, where all the sugars kind of burn, eaten by the yeast, we do not have a final filtration. And therefore, we have the sediments in the bottles. It falls into that cloudy wine category. These sediments offer also a strong feeling on the palate. So we have this big difference between the Vecchia Modena and the Fondatore. And the Fondatore, we are able to have just a few different lots a year because of the times that it takes for naturally re-ferment in the bottle with the rising of the temperatures. But of course, this is a very, very, very elegant type of Lambrusco that we interpreted in a very special way, I believe. So ancestral method Lambrusco, as it was done at the beginning of the history of Lambrusco, is not exactly like the Fondatore. So we kind of used the technology in the CLETO CHIARLI winery and the technology that Brian has just told us about to kind of provide within the bottle the right wine before the last fermentation. So kind of stabilized, controlled Lambrusco of sorbara juice that is going to help us have a very, very stable and a controlled second fermentation in the bottle, which is a very, very delicate type of winemaking process. So I think these two are within, of course, a winery for sure, a very, very interesting and important interpretations of sorbara, the Vecchia Modena and the Fondatore.
Fantastic. I mean, like we said at the outset, there's over 60 different varieties of Lambrusco. And obviously the two that have been identified. There's also Salamino. I mean, there's a few other grapes that are also important in the area, but it's really Sorbara, the lighter one, and Grasparosa, the darker, richer one that has more anthocyanins, more catechins, more skin color, basically.
The Grasparosa. The Grasparosa is another very important grape varietal that we work with. It grows in our Cialdini estate, exactly where the winery is located. The Grasparosa has some common characteristic to the Sorbara in terms of high acidity and a good residual sugar, a good natural sugar. But compared to the Sorbara, we find a more robust type of grape, a higher yield variety. And the Grasparosa kind of falls into that typical red sparkling category in terms of color. Of course, we see that we have a very, very, very deep red sparkling wine with the Grasparosa. The grape punch presents very, very robust kind of berries with a thick skin. Therefore, we have an interesting tannic influence. So we have a sparkling wine that is light in body, good in acidity, but also we have the influence of the tannins. So we have a very, very elegant type of red sparkling wines. For those who love red wines, this is a very, very good compromise, I like to say, for having a sparkling wine for this kind of consumers group. And the Grasparosa has a higher residual sugar than the Sorbara that we make. So here we have around 12 grams per liter of sugar, and it's considered a dry style Grasparosa because of the body that surrounds the residual sugar. As we can see here, the Grasparosa Vigneto Cialdini comes from the Cialdini vineyard, so it's a single vineyard Grasparosa. I like to say that from the local cuisine, you can pair this wine with the heavier type of food that are consumed here. So from the rich pastas with ragu, you see lasagna, this kind of rich pastas can really be paired with the Vigneto Cialdini and Grasparosa in general. And then, of course, as you move to other cuisines, perhaps the American cuisine, when you have, for example, Thanksgiving with a nice roast meat, roast turkey, I think this is a great wine, and it gives a kind of party feeling. Or any sparkling wines gives a party feeling, but when you have these red, fizzy sparkling wines that is dry and it kind of fits so well with your local cuisine, I think it's
maybe that's what makes
it's a bonus. It's a bonus.
Maybe that's what make it makes people happy, and it's fizzy. It goes with, as you said earlier, it goes with so many different foods because of the acid, and in some cases because of the residual sugar. Depending if you're eating spicier foods, whatever, that residual sugar and that bubbles can really cut through that and make them a lot more approachable and palatable, and raises the flavors across the board in the dish. But it's I think one of the reasons that it's so successful is the value. And while Lambrusco started out as sweet, inexpensive, volume kind of product, and for many, in many cases, it still represents that. But at the highest levels, it's that rare opportunity where you can get the best of the best for $20, a little under $20, over $20, depending on what. But it's not like trying to buy the best, bubbles out of France or out of California or whatever, where it's tremendously expensive. Here we can get some of the best, and we can also look to some of the best restaurants, both in Italy and in the United States, so just what we're personally familiar with here, to see what people are pouring, to see what people are drinking, to see what's being poured by the glass. And in many cases, some of our best customers, like in Houston, they're pouring it out of Magnum, just Chiarli, Magnum, Vecchia Modena, right there by the glass room that walks in the restaurant. You've got arguably one of the most outstanding restaurants in the world that's in Modena. And who is that, and why is that important? And do they pour Lambrusco, or are they pouring more important wines at their restaurant?
Yeah, of course, the Osteria Francescana from Massimo Bottura is the Bottura, of course, being born in Modena, he's always kind of appreciated the local Lambrusco and endorsed the movement, even in the recent years, of a renaissance of Lambrusco. In his restaurant in Modena, he has a very, very wide selection of Lambrusco that he also kind of brings along with him throughout his events around the world. He also just opened a very, very incredible relais, so this countryside hotel and B&B in very close to the center of Modena. And in the minibar, he has got a half bottle of Vecchia Modena. So in case anyone will ever find themselves in his hotel, they'll find our Lambrusco there. And I think it's a great endorsement to have these great figures in the world of food and wine to kind of back the Lambrusco movement, CLETO CHIARLI, and these great different red sparkling wines that we've got here. I would also like to say that Lambruscos, as we've discovered, there's so many varietals. Today we spoke about 2, and you can see that they have very, very, very different flavor profiles, very different at the look. So these wines can really go, can be served from an aperitif through a casual kind of dining context to a celebration context, and also to different consumers profiles. You have consumers that prefer something lighter, something drier, or they can prefer something kind of more robust. You've got the Grasparossa with the tannins that are very, very strong there. And also that we haven't spoke about today, but there are also flavor profiles of Grasparossa that go towards a semi-sweet that we also make in the CLETO CHIARLI winery, the Amabile. That's the kind of the category name for a semi-sweet Lambrusco, which means lovable. It is a great, great wine to pair perhaps towards a dessert, or as Brian said before, with spicy food from many different type of cuisine. That sometimes is very, very hard to pair a wine with spicy food, with Oriental cuisine that has very strong profiles, flavor profiles. We got the semi-sweet Centenario Amabile, which is a DOC Grasparossa with a good residual sugar, but also we see this acidity that is still there, that balances it very well and does not make it kind of sugary, sticky sweet, but a very elegant semi-sweet type of wine. So as you can see, there's so many different Lambrusco styles offered by the varietals, offered by the intrinsic characteristics of these grapes that can really, 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 anyone can find the right time, the right occasion, the right partner to drink one of these Lambruscos with. So
yeah, I mean, you said lovable. I mean, you're lovable, and these wines are equally lovable. And we've got like Massimo Bottura he's really an ambassador. He's an ambassador for Modena. He's an ambassador for the region, and he's an ambassador for Lambrusco and CLETO CHIARLI in particular. He's now opened up in the United States. He's down here in Beverly Hills with an extraordinary wine program, also featuring CLETO CHIARLI. It's part of the history, and the pairings that come out of that help people think about Lambrusco beyond, or maybe we should just say beyond Lambrusco, beyond what their previous concepts have been. Let's take just a quick cut and just talk briefly about another one of your wines, which is organically certified. Can you just talk to us just a little bit about the vineyards themselves, about Viva, and about the organic farming that allows you to do that? Is that a direction or an experiment?
So organic farming has not been very, very popular, sadly, in the Lambrusco production, but there is a reason behind this. We live in a very, very flat land. Most vineyards in the Lambrusco area are based in a flatland, characterized by interesting weather. So we got a very humid, hot summers, followed by quite cold and again, wet winters. This kind of helps us obtain very, very interesting grape varietals, unique varietals, like the Lambrusco varietals, but it's also very hard to keep these vineyards healthy throughout the year. And therefore, there's not been a big movement around organic Lambrusco in the area. But in the recent years, we have started to cooperate with local growers near Castelvetro. Castelvetro is the first village in the south of Modena that goes towards the hillside. So there are very, very interesting estates, very interesting vineyards in the hillsides of Castelvetro. So we are about 300 to 400 meters above sea level. And there we have seen that growers have the ability to do organic farming over there. So we started to partner up with them. And since last year, we started making 100% organic Grasparossa in secco, so brut style, quite similar to the Cialdini in terms of flavor profile, but of course has some differences. The company, however, is very invested in CLETO CHIARLI, in corporate social responsibility in Castelvetro especially. So we follow the Viva program, which is a program established by the Ministry of Land and Sea in Italy. The Viva program kind of looks at several different indicators, such as the territory, so the cultural aspect of the territory that surrounds us. We sort of organize charity events within CLETO CHIARLI, especially one night in the summer on the 23rd of June, which sadly this year probably will not happen because of what you all know. And it looks at other more material indicators, such as the amount of water used throughout the year. Of course, water is very much needed throughout the summer to water the vineyards because of the dry summers that we have got. But every year we are improving the use and waste of water thanks to these external consultants coming from the Ministry of Viva. There are other indicators such as the pollution used by the machinery used in the vineyards. And every year we are performing better and better in these indicators. And we have been granted this Viva certificate, which is relatively new, but very, very, I have to say, hard to get. And not many wineries in Italy have obtained this. Perhaps it's not so well known outside of the borders of Italy, but as Brian can confirm, is a very tough certificate to obtain.
Yeah, it shows that this
is
is
not a one-time shot.
No, this is not a
game. It looks in the
this
long
is,
term. Yeah, it
yeah,
looks the long term. Every year you must perform one of these indicators to get granted again this Viva program. So it is an ongoing commitment that we have. And alongside the organic Grasparossa, which we believe we will be able to increase in terms of quantity, in terms of production in the coming years. So we'll see an interesting, other interesting, perhaps Lambrusco grape varietals being produced in the organic farming in the coming years. And
it's been well received over here when we were finally able to present it here. It's got a really beautiful, whimsical kind of a label on it. 100% organic fruit. And as you said, you made a huge commitment. I think that this commitment begins in the vineyards, but extends to everything that you do, all the way into the market. Your commitment to support the market, both as an individual, as a family, and as basically ambassadors for your own region. Those things are really important. We focused on obviously Lambrusco because that's who and what you are. Just real briefly, here in the U.S., we've got a large following also for Brut Rosé, which is not Lambrusco. It comes out, it looks more like a traditional sparkling wine bottle, crystal clear glass, a beautiful presentation. Can you tell us just a couple of words about the Brut Rosé?
Yeah, so the Brut Rosé is a relatively modern sparkling wine in the area. We kind of used a vast amount of Grasparossa vineyards that we have. So we obtained this wine from mostly Grasparossa. We have some Pinot Noir that comes into it. This is produced by a soft pressing of the skin. So we obtain very, very, very light pigmentation. We transfer a very light pigmentation to the wine. It has been an incredible success for CLETO CHIARLI. This Brut Rosé has a 12-gram residual sugar, has got the acidity of the Grasparossa, the body of the Pinot Noir, and it kind of meets in terms of prices and in terms of quality any kind of consumer's profile. So we got this very balanced in terms of sugar and acidity type of brut rosé. We make a large format for by the glass kind of serving. It is ideal to start your Lambrusco dinner because, of course, there are Lambrusco grapes in this brut rosé, and it has been a success both in our domestic market, but mostly in the US.
It's been, like you said, it's that beautiful amalgamation that comes from
we have the know-how of making great young sparkling wine. So why not get into other types of sparkling wines other than Lambrusco?
You do have that. You've got that know-how.
So yeah.
It's great to have know-how. It's great to have wine. It's great to have it in pretty bottles. It's great to be able to see stuff.
Yes.
But it's what's not so great is if you can't get to the wine. Tommaso, if you can't open the bottle, it's a problem. So with the Brut Rosé, that opens just like it. You twist it, cork flies out, and you pour it. But one of the wines that you're most known for, hold it up a little bit higher so it's in. There we go. So this is the Vecchia Modena. And take a look at that cork. So this thing is closed with a steel leaf spring. This thing is sealed shut with a big chunk of steel. People get that, they pick it up. It's really one of the most traditional closures. It's in Francais, it's called a graphe, and it's the way, basically a staple, a steel staple. And it's the way that all champagne used to be closed back in the day. And so that technology or those traditions were brought over in the 1800s to Italy as well. And it's still the way that you've chosen for tradition's sake. For tradition's sake, and it works beautifully. It's just a little daunting, let's say, to look at a big chunk of steel.
Yeah, it could be tricky to figure out how to open it.
How do we get at this? It's supposed to be really good.
I promise you, it's much faster than the typical sparkling wine closure. So I show you how. You take a CLETO CHIARLI wine key. You use the little knife of the wine key. You slide it, say this way, under graph here, and then you pull it on the side.
No, can't be that easy.
You pop your bottle.
Oh, look at that. That's just heaven in the
beautiful
glass. In your special Riedel custom glass with the sorbata colored stem on that. Oh, nice work.
Cheers.
Bravo. Chin chin. Well, with
chin,
that,
chin.
I wanna thank you for sharing this history with us, and for bringing us all into the fold. Obviously, for those who are interested and able, the winery is an extraordinary place to visit. The CLETO CHIARLI winery, and if you want to go visit, it's you can reach out to the winery or to Dalaterra through our website or theirs. Hopefully, we'll be able to get out there in the very near future. I want to wish you and your family the very, very best. It's, as I said, it's been a real treat to work for almost a decade together with them and with all of you, and to bring you into the fold now. It's fantastic that you finished your studies in the UK and you're back home where you belong.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you everybody for taking part of this session. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to coming back to the US to visit the markets and meet you all guys in the US. So thank you very much.
Grazie mille. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining this Dalaterra Masterclass. Next week, we're taking Thursday off, and next week we'll be meeting with the Faluga Winery and speaking with Ilaria Faluga on next Tuesday. So you can sign up for that at our website. You can review this masterclass and others on our Dalaterra YouTube channel. You can just look for that or find it on our link on our website. Grazie mille, Tommaso, tutta la famiglia Chiarli. È stato sempre un grande piacere di poter collaborare con voi. We're in really good hands over there. Looking forward to the future. And for all of us, let's be smart. Let's be kind to one another. Focus locally, and let's drink globally. Grazie. Arrivederci.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.